Welcome back to another PogChamps recap video. In this one, we are featuring one creator in particular, and that creator is Pokimane. She played her first game of chess and scored a whopping 2% accuracy or something like that the day after Christmas, December 26th. Since then, it's been less than 2 months. It's February 22nd right now. She's taken a bunch of lessons, worked extremely hard, and had a very tough group. 900 and up was her group in PogChamps. So we are going to look at some of her final group day games against Rubius and xQc today. So let's go. First game, she plays d4, and Rubius is 900, so he's over 200 point favorite. d4, d5. Poki plays bishop f4. She plays the London system, which she picked up from Anna. Also, my London video. I'm pretty sure I know that for a fact. Knight c6, e3, and bishop f5. Knight f3, queen d7. So Rubius goes for this setup against the London players, and just general opening players. Listen up. When you are playing an opening, yes, you can just pre-move the moves of the opening, but you also need to adapt. And here Poki correctly spots the move bishop to b5. She realizes that she can triple pin here. Rubius plays the move a6, which attacks the bishop. Poki, having done enough opening training and tactics training, is already punishing the inaccurate setup by black. She plays the move knight to e5. She doesn't lazily take. How many of us lazily just move our bishop out and just take the knight no matter what? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Don't lie to yourself. You do that, okay? You can also play bishop, you can play bishop to a4, but then black will play b5 and kick out your bishop completely. So she just jumps in because now she's attacking the queen. Queen moves out to d6. Now this position's actually very funny because even though you can play knight takes c6, very common, queen is hit. This is hanging, but can't take, queen's hit. Rubius plays queen to e6. What's funny about this position is that no matter what you move, something is going to be lost. So if you move the knight like knight d8 check and hitting the queen, then king takes, and you've actually gotten nowhere. It's kind of a weird position. So here Poki plays bishop back to e2. She just retreats her bishop, and she makes the right decision. She prefers to keep the bishop rather than losing the bishop and then giving away and keeping the knight. So bishop goes back, Rubius takes, and now c3. c3 is not bad. I would consider castling. I wouldn't worry too much about this because I feel like if black takes it, they're just going to be behind in development, but c3 is perfectly good. Long castle, and now knight to d2. This is obviously good development. Knight to f3 by Poki. And here again, I would just castle, just go castle, finish your setup, but she plays knight to e5. She brings the knight. As long as there's no blunders, I'm good. Bishop takes, threatens the pawn on g7, which is perfectly reasonable. f6, bishop f4. But here, Rubius plays the best move. He punishes this opening by Poki, and she punished him earlier. Now he's returning the favor and plays the move g5. So now she has to go here, and he plays h5. So he actually, if you remember, xQc did this to Rubius. So Rubius is learning from his previous games, and now Poki plays the move h4, which is a very good move. She realized that her bishop was going to get trapped, so she plays h4. Rubius goes back to g6. Bit of a strange move. I guess he saw this and he decided to defend, but definitely the best move here for black is just to push. Because what you do when you push is you lock the structure. Whereas when you go here, you allow white to still take. And that's not really what happened, as you can see. Poki went to the other side of the board. Her logic was there's a king castle here, so I'm going to go for a pawn storm. But every time you push a pawn, you make something stronger, you weaken something else. And in this case, you've abandoned the defense of this. Queen c3, and now this is a very common first of all, mistake. You should have castled your king. Your king's in the middle, but don't block. You will relinquish defense of the rook in the corner, right? So queen d2, of course, it's better for her to just play king f1. And she doesn't lose her rook, and the game goes on. But she's down a rook. Now, you're down a rook. What do? Don't trade queens. Do not trade queens. You are up, so she obviously should have played bishop d1. Now, Rubius, you are up a rook. Should you trade queens? Yes, you should. But he goes for the free pawn, which kind of makes sense. I mean, it's a free pawn. Why wouldn't you go for a free pawn? The problem with this is that white is still kind of in the game after this, and now she castles. And here Rubius plays a move which is really not good. And it's crazy because it actually does, it's not a bad move. A lot of us beginners will, well, not me, but I'm just saying a lot of beginners, a lot of players when they are beginners. I'm not a beginner. I don't want to insult myself all the time. Sometimes is enough, but I've played chess for 20 years, so if I'm a beginner at this point, what the hell is in store for you watching, right? So, look, bishop c2 is an okay move, but the truth is that too many of us like to make these one-move attacking moves. Like, oh, I'm going there and I'm defended. It's a good move. No. It doesn't have a long-term purpose. Poki plays queen d2, and all of a sudden you're a little bit stuck. Now the best move for black is to play bishop b3. Black doesn't do that. So Rubius plays a move that like doesn't change anything, and all of a sudden, because she just moved her queen up, Poki spawns rook c1. And oh my goodness. The thing is that when you are up a rook, you need to play with that piece. You can't just have it sitting in the corner. All right, it's not like owning a fancy car under a cloth in your garage. That thing is worth $100,000 even if you don't drive it. But in this case, if you need to go from the house to the grocery store, you gotta get into a car, okay? You can't just walk, right? So if you have the extra rook here, yes, you can keep it tucked away, but it needs to play or you will lose. And what ends up happening is Poki finds rook c7, and it doesn't anymore matter that black is up a rook, because black is actually dead lost. Because black has to move the king to the middle. If what happens in the game, king b8, now Poki spots that anywhere she moves the rook is a discovered check on the king. So where should you move the rook? Get the max value. She brings it back to c2. And then she takes the queen. Rubius takes. Now you have queen and two bishops versus two rooks and a knight. What do? Beautiful. Beautiful. Pawn break. Was that the top engine move? Yeah, one of them. b5. Fantastic move. Now she takes the free pawn attacking the rook. She pins the rook to the king, paralyzing it, and she just chops away the pieces. She chops. Poki's conversion here, it took a little bit of time because she was very very relaxed about it. She didn't just go and shred it open. And actually, Rubius did one thing look at this. Look what Rubius did. Even with his two rooks, he managed to create a checkmate threat. For the more experienced players watching, you're probably like, this is so dumb. Why is he not resigning? And actually, there is a mate in this position. Queen takes pawn. On the other side of the board, the king has nowhere to go because the bishop covers. Queen takes pawn. But for sub 1000 players, the game is never over until literally the thing pops up and it says won by resignation or by checkmate or draw or whatever. And even then, you're not even fully convinced. So she correctly makes room for her king. She doesn't just queen the pawn, then she runs the king away, and then, well, we got this really hilarious position with two queens versus two rooks, but Poki went on to convert this position, and the way I will show this is she simplified. She sacked the queen for the rook, she won the pawns, and she went to something that's familiar. There's a couple of ways to win this, beginners. Make a second queen and ladder mate, or do what she does. She gets what's called knight opposition. So if it was a knight, it would be check, and copies the king. So anywhere that it moves, she goes one square that way, one square that way, one square that way. And she gets the king to the last, and then there you go, she brings the king, and she ended up checkmating on move 67, like this. So a very nice win, a convincing win, honestly. Like, that was a great win. That was a 690 rated player. In their second matchup, she had the black pieces, and we're actually going to watch this from her perspective, because again, this video really is kind of zoning in on the fact that within 2 months, she got to this level. So for those of you struggling, it is doable. She has played about 150 chess games. That's it. To get to 700 from 0, not too bad. So e4, e6, she plays the French, d4, d5, knight c3. Now here, playing c5 is mildly inaccurate, but for this level, this is a completely fine move. She then plays knight to f6. The whole point of the French is to take space with pawns in the center. White plays bishop g5. She responds with the pin, countering the pin. White comes out with this bishop. Again, y'all gotta realize that bringing your bishops out this actively is not necessary because they will just get traded, right? And already black actually has some small advantage. And she realizes that and takes the pawn. So Poki's not just pre-moving the opening. And also a lot of beginners forget about the pawns in the center. They just leave them there like that car in the garage. She takes. Now white goes to e5 with the knight. And here again, she could have taken, but she decides to play knight c6 and trade off the knight. Rubius goes back. So Rubius is already slipping up in the opening. He's playing way too tentatively, going there, going back. you just kind of have to know that your pieces shouldn't be looking like this. Just the easiest thing here, take this maybe, or just castle. Just get the king out of the middle of the board. But he sticks around too long and he loses a second pawn. Now he castles. Now she's like, oh, he castled? I could castle too. c3, the knight drops back to c6, and Rubius again expands with a pawn. But take, and now bishop takes b4, queen b3. So black is up 3 pawns. What do you do when you're up 3 pawns? You simplify. Or you push a pawn 1 square. That move actually does not address piece interactions. It's a lesson in piece interactions. These knights see each other. White might go, taking is dumb, I don't want to do that. But the queen is attacking the bishop if the knight is not guarding it. That's why with white, you need to look at the forcing moves first. In this position with white, the first thing you should look at is, can I take this? Can I take this? Can I take this? Can I take this? You go, wait a minute, what if I take this and then this? Oh, great. And that's how you think in chess. Rubius attacks the queen, she moves out of the way, and now the knight jumps into b6. Rubius is really good at these one-move attacking moves, and she's responding very well and very solidly. So now she takes, and she goes for the simplification. She trades 2 rooks because she's up a queen. What? She's up 3 pawns, not a queen. Wow. It's been a long day. It's 11 p.m. right now. I'm recording this, my 3rd recording of the day, and I streamed earlier. All right, bear with me. I'm working as hard as I can, but I'm not going to edit that out. f3, and what f3 does is it gives a little bit of breathing room to the king, but it opens up this diagonal. So now queen c5 is a knockout. That's a really tough move to see. Instead, she kind of chops, and then finds it. But you can't hate on that. I mean, she finds queen c5, it hits everything, and then she takes the bishop here. Rubius plays knight to d7. I don't know if this was a trick or a blunder. She spots the backwards knight move. The queen infiltrates to get to the back rank with queen a7. She plays h6. So Poki, still being the beginner, is like, oh my god, he's trying to mate me, even though that's not mate, because you can block like this, guarded, or block with the queen, or block like this, or like this. Also, you always need to look for checks, and this is mate, and this wins the queen. So don't always think defensively. Still check that structure. You don't need to go, I gotta go, right? But she ends up getting the mate anyway. Finds the nice back rank idea, deflecting the king from the defense. I mean, are you kidding me? I would think that this is at least a 900, 1000 playing these games. So great stuff from her. And she actually beat Rubius 2-0 in their head-to-head. Rubius finished the group stage in last, and even though he had 2 fantastic matchups against Negreanu and xQc. So the last game that I wanted to feature is actually Pokimane's game against xQc. If you watched my video on xQc's like Rise, that kind of epic thumbnail where he played against Negreanu and Pokimane on the same day, then you know the result of this game. But I'm going to look at it from Pokimane's perspective. Last time I was just looking at big picture. How can she learn from a game like this against the guy xQc who I'm actually gonna check this in the middle of the recap. I mean, I'm just gonna see how many games xQc has played. He's played 1,100 rapid games and 700 blitz games, nearly 2,000 games. She has played 150 games lifetime. Okay, and we're gonna take a look at this game. D4, D5. She goes for the London, which is one of the reasons why the London is so solid. And now bishop b4 check is a mistake because you're helping white develop. They get their pawn move. And now she knows this idea, knight to e5. Such an important idea in the London. You can also rock this back here and hope that they take and open up your rook. And then if they castle, it's a big disaster there. So she knows about this knight e5 idea. Super important, not letting black move e5, keeping black restrained, keeping them pinned back. And if black takes this, then you take with the pawn, kicking the knight out of here, and maybe your queen can come here in the future. She learned these ideas from the video that she did with Hikaru, the lesson that she did with Hikaru. If you want a good London planning lesson, go watch that video after this. Don't leave yet. I still need the ad revenue, okay? So D takes E5, is the idea. And xQc actually misclicked at this point. It truly was a misclick because he clicks pieces before he moves them, takes, but now, in a forking situation, he finds the move g5. Danger levels and deflecting her bishop, and then this. Many people here would either take this or take one of these. She stays patient, realizing that the bishop can just drop back, and this is maintained. When the knight moves out of the way, she reverts back a little bit to that beginner level and just takes the bishop. but doesn't realize that actually queen takes knight. A lot of you miss these long queen moves, but it's fine. She takes the right way. Now, she at this point is like hyped. She's like, I'm up a knight. This is great. She's not thinking, I gotta finish my development in castle. She's going, wait a minute. There's another free thing on the edge of the board. That free thing should not be taken. Because if you take it with the rook, black is going to go take, and you should be very careful wandering this far into your opponent's territory. There are many positions your bishop can just get locked away. Not in this case, if you find queen h5, but just in general, be very wary about putting your bishop in such a deep situation. It sometimes can get locked away. She takes with what's worth less, which is a concept beginners do a lot. In this case, superseding concepts. You take with what's worth less, but you've pinned yourself. You've won a pawn, but it's a poison fruit, and now you can't move. You can't move your rook or your bishop. xQc immediately goes to the other side of the board. She finds a good idea here. She's up material, trade the queens. Just get them off the board, now you're never going to be under attack. But it's difficult for a beginner here to find a way to get out of this. Anytime you're pinned like this, you need to enable the movement of one of your pieces. If you move your bishop, you need your rook to be guarded. That's really difficult. It's going to take you at least 1, 2, so your rook is guarded by the rook, or 1, 2, or move your rook up, and in this case, rook h5, so you can play bishop to g6. I'm not even joking, look, because even though you can take me, I have this, and your rook is not guarded. That's the most important thing, so I use that, and then I can kind of escape, consolidate, and win the game. So be very careful. She plays e4, but after it takes, she realizes she has to move the knight, and now this. And again, backwards knight moves here. She looks at this and go, oh, I can't do this. Wait a second. Why can't you do that? Bishop for rook, you're pinned, your knight can block. So you would get a bishop losing a rook. That's a 2-point swing. Otherwise, you just lose the bishop. That's 3-0. So hard to manage all this during a game, but she takes, castles. Okay, he castles, you castle too. Wait a minute. Every move, can I take something? Any checks? Yes. This new castling enabled the open file, right? Rook a7 here would have been the best move. She castles. xQc plays rook to d3, knight to c4. The problem with this is that rook takes rook is annoying, but she correctly spots that she does not want to relinquish this control and plays king takes. xQc misses a liberation tactic here. He can give a check. I just made that up. There's no such thing as a... But he can free up his position. Rook d8 check can be played, and then moving the bishop. He doesn't see it. At this point, you need to be thinking, can they check me? How can they attack me? How can they check me? If there's anything you learn from my videos, it's the chess thought process. Oh yeah, they can play rook d8. King e2, good luck ever moving one of those pieces. It's never going to happen. Literally, the best plan here for black is to go boop, 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 and defend everything as I showed you before so you can move something. She plays knight to e3, and now xQc finds rook d8, being the more experienced player, noticing, takes on e4, and still, she finds the top engine move, rook h6, fighting for the pawns, f5, and she should have stayed persistent here, getting in like this, but she plays g4, reacting to f5. Follow your dreams. Follow your dreams. It's not over. Even if you feel the game slipping, now xQc pushes, and he converts this very well. She had one more trap, and again, she was doing a very good job here, hunting these pawns down. It's what you have to do in the endgame. But xQc was just honestly too clinical. Maybe here, again, king e3 controls the entrance of the rook and the pawn promoting, but xQc ultimately was victorious, finding this escape for the king on the back rank. What are you going to do? And then she did her best, but xQc won it in the end, converting it very nicely. And now you know one of the games covered in that xQc video. But I wanted to show this one because she had a winning position against an opponent that had literally played 20 times more games than she had. 100, 2,000, right? 20 times. That's not even counting Bullet. How many Bullet games has he played? Another 200. So yeah, about 2,000 games. So listen, Pokimane should be proud of her performance. She is the top seed in the consolation bracket, and that means that she will play Myth in the first round of the playoffs in the consolation bracket. She is going up against Myth, who was the second seed in Group A in consolation. There is a very high chance Poki can make it to the finals, if not outright win the consolation bracket completely. There are some very, very tough challenges in there. Tubbo's very good, for example. But she is going to be tough for anybody in that constellation bracket. And I just wanted to feature her games. It honestly should inspire you. Because the first time I made a video about Pokimane, some of you crazies came out in the comments. And as I've been saying at the end of all of these recap videos, I'm really not bothered and could care less about that kind of stuff. So I'm going to keep making the content, keep featuring all these great creators. And hopefully you just, focus on the games and enjoy the games. And if you do have an agenda to hate, by all means, keep doing it. Make sure that you watch the whole video before you write a hate comment, though. And maybe, dislike it as well. That helps the algorithm.